to make sure that people understood what this bill is and what it isn't. The bill does not create the city of South Fulton. The bill gives the people who live in South Fulton an opportunity to decide for themselves how they want to be governed and by whom they want to be governed. Right now, that area is being governed by people who don't live in the area, and as a result of that, they are not sensitive to the needs and the conditions under which people are living in the area. There's several people that will talk today, but there's three areas that I wanted to kind of focus on before I turn the podium over to my colleague, Virgil Flood. And one of them has to do with the school system and the uniqueness of this particular cityhood effort versus some of the others that have taken place. The other efforts did not have a trial period like we've had. We've been functioning as a city for almost 10 years now. The area has we were forced, as you know, to set up a separate tax, a special service tax, that is only being paid by that area. And that money is being used to pay for traditional city services, police, fire, zoning, other issues. And it's the only area that pays that. So we've had a test period to see whether or not the city is functional, whether the city can deal with and somebody else will talk about the financial piece of it, but it's clear that the city is financially solvent and will continue to be so. And when we get our fair share of the sales tax that we're not getting because we're not a city, this will be a very lucrative and potentially beneficial area for many, many people. So that's what we want to make sure that people understand.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is JSebastian, and I'm a citizen of South Fulton County, and I have been active in the push for cityhood maybe for the last four years or so. And as I was sitting there and trying to decide what to say, I realized that 5 years ago I did not know anyone in this room. But I got invited to a meeting, and basically it was come and understand a very large issue that's potentially going to negatively affect your region. And so one of the things for me was digging into the numbers, because I'm just naturally a numbers person. And so in doing so, I learned about the feasibility study that our citizens organized had done towards getting this bill passed. And some of the things that I learned from those numbers is that we potentially, as a city, if we were to become a city, we have the opportunity to have a city that not only have been paying its own way, as was mentioned, since 2006 because of our SSD and the taxes we pay into that, but we also would have about $4 to $17 million in surplus, right? And so as we look at even the numbers from this year's Fulton County budget for the SSD, it's about revenue, it's about $50 million, and expenditure are actually $55 million. So with our surplus, we had to take about $5 million to balance the budget. So we say, can we really continue to do that? Can we continue to live off of our savings every single year? Or is it going to be a point where the services that we get and that we deserve in South Fulton are going to be affected because there's not enough money, right? And having not been officially a city, we do not get our cut of the local option sales tax. And for us, that is estimated to be anywhere between $20 to $30 million that we would receive in addition. So as well as the revenue of $50 million that we currently raise, we would be adding $20 to $30 million to that number. And obviously, we would have a surplus that would enable us to increase the services of the people in South Fulton.
Living through the tremendous change in Fulton County governance over the last 10, 15, 20 years ought to be applauded, because they've been very, very much engaged. And in fact, they've been the ones that have pushed for the legislation, particularly over the last 3 or 4 years. So and I'm sure you'll hear from some of them a little bit later, are deserving of a great deal of applause and some recognition for their work, because it's not just the legislators that did this. And then secondly, I want to point out that there have been any number of meetings that I've attended personally and others that I couldn't, but the overwhelming support that I've seen and heard by the people who live in South Fulton. As I mentioned, I've represented the area for the last 14 years and have been in numerous meetings, large meetings, small meetings, one-on-one conversations, and overwhelmingly, the people in South Fulton have said, in my presence, that they want to have the opportunity to choose their own destiny. Most of them have said they would prefer to be a city, but every one of them deserves an opportunity to at least decide for themselves how they want to be governed. And I'm, as Representative Bruce referred to earlier, I would call on the existing cities to give those people who live in unincorporated South Fulton an opportunity on November 4th to decide for themselves how they want to be governed and allow them to have that opportunity. And I'm convinced, not just by the numbers, but by the sheer will of the people in this community, that they will have a city that is not only vibrant, but also a city that is successful.